Hey team, I'm Andrew Kotler, TRG Arts, and I'm going to give you some core concepts of TRG Arts Data Center. We're going to cover segmenting and importing your data for success. We'll create a campaign together and run some reports, talk about how we can use the tool for benchmarking with EDI, and then some helpful tips for helping the marketing and fundraising team collaborate. So I'm going to share my screen here. Here we go. For today's purposes, I'm going to use the account of Paper Mill Playhouse. Hopefully they won't mind. No proprietary data in there. But let's start with this evolution of a patron slide. This is kind of why we do everything we do in data center. So the concept here is that you wouldn't ask someone to marry you on the first date, right? That would be too much too soon. So similarly, we wouldn't ask someone who's never stepped foot um, inside of our venue to take a big leap, like become a subscriber or donor right away. We just want to get them the right person, the right message at the right time. So data center is all about being able to identify where your patrons are, your historic customers are on this evolution of a patron ladder. Whether they're a new single ticket buyer, we probably want to give them very specific messaging just to get them back for their next show, their next event. Repeat and multi-buyer, same thing. They're ready for their next step on the ladder. So that's why we do everything we do pretty much in data center. Now, talking about segmentation, if I click on Help Desk here in the upper right corner, that will take me to Help Desk. And we've got some great documentation in here on segmentation planning. I happen to just go ahead and I pulled this one already. And this will tell us how we want to segment our data. So there's a three attributes basically to apply to use your naming convention. It's fiscal year, type of segment, in this case, single ticket buyers, subscribers, donors, that's a suppression segment. And then the segment description, which is typically just like the name of the show or the name of the fundraising campaign, for example. So this is what we're going to look at in just a second once we start to get our data imported of how we are going to name our segments. And segments are just the breadcrumbs that we leave from the past, these buckets of our historic patrons, so that we can use them for reporting, for upcoming direct mail campaigns, and for just research to know who your patrons are, right? Because typically, if we know who your past patrons are, we can use that information to invite them to future events, right? Your best future customers are your past customers. And then also we can use their demographic data through the data center tool, and I'll show you how to do this in just a moment, to find more people like them, right? Through your other house data and through trade data in the community network. So all that to say, this is the segment naming convention. Here's 2014 single ticket buyers for Nutcracker. Again, that 2014 is going to be the umbrella. We're going to have a lot of segments from that fiscal year. Single ticket buyer is the type of segment they are, that segment type code. And then Nutcracker is the segment description. Speaking of segment type code, another great report here in Help Desk is that segment type code. I'm going to search for it here. Here we go. Here's a table. This will give you all of the TRG segment type codes based on that segment type that you're pulling. So STB single ticket buyer, probably one of the most common. Flex for your subscribers who are choose your own or flexible. Sub for subscriptions. Mem, Don. There are tons on here. And this is individualized. You're gonna apply this to your organization's needs. There are education segments, for instance, which you might use for student matinees if you have them. You might use for student programming, etc. So you're going to apply this to your needs, your usage. But all that to say is this segment type code table is in here. So To get my data imported, I'm going to go over here to Data Center, and I'm going to go to my Imports module. And I've already uploaded, let me show you how to do that again, this file in here. This is a file that you're pulling from your CRM, whatever it is. It's going to be typically a sales file. That includes a few variables. It's going to need to include um, full patron name, patron address, including city, state, and postal code, and then a unique patron ID. And the reason that unique patron ID is so important, that's how we create basically a household account in Data Center for each of your customers. And we use, of course, NCOA uses last name and address to check for a unique mailable household. We use that unique patron ID to, again, prevent the creation of duplicates. We typically don't care about duplicates. Data Center will take care of that for us, but we need that unique patron ID to make sure that we're tracking that to make sure that we're not duplicating household accounts. Okay, so I've got my file in here. It was that simple. It's ready for import. So we're going to go through that process now. You can always preview your file here. You can see the file if you click on that. You're always going to pretty much choose the same choices here. And once I do it, it's going to remember me next time. It's going to remember my selection. So I'm always going to import segments. It's always going to be house data. It's going to always have to contain patron names and mailing addresses. That is required to import patrons into Data Center. We have to have name and mailing address at minimum. And then here it's asking me, was the file exported from a commercially available ticketing or CRM system? I'm going to say yes. And it's going to know from past imports what I've used, whether it's Testatora, Patron Edge, or any of them. And every CRM is applicable here. So I could select Testatura. Later, it's going to ask me for that unique patron ID. So here's a quick um, uh, uh, way that you can get around that is by selecting it's not from a commercially available CRM if you don't have a unique patron ID. If you don't have a unique patron ID, select no, and that's a way to get around the step. It's not a best practice, so I would warn you before doing that that it could lead to creating duplicates in your data center account. But if you don't have a unique patron ID, that's how you could get around that step. So I'm going to say yes, it does have a commercially available, it does come from a commercially available ticketing or CRM system, and it's from Tessitura. Next, you're pretty much always going to select add new patrons from the existing file. The only time you would update segments to match what's in the file is if you're updating a segment like you're checking your sales pacing on subscribers and want to do updates there or something like that. But pretty much you're always going to add new patrons from the file to existing segments. And then click on our next screen. Here's where you get to decide to tell the system, this is all one segment, meaning one show, or this is a bunch of segments, a bunch of shows, or a bunch of campaign lists or whatever. And you can specify that here. So if I say the file is all one segment and I'll describe it, I could say, this is my entire list from 2024 single ticket buyers for Mamma Mia, just for the fun of it. One of my favorites. If I select the file has columns that indicate the segment for each group, well, then in the next screen, the file mapping screen, I would indicate those by placing these three things in three columns in your spreadsheet. Again, if I clicked that preview file, I could see the data in the spreadsheet. So if you have a bunch of segments, a bunch of data, let's say you're updating historic data from the past year or two, you could list a bunch of segments, and in each patron household record, each row, you would list that fiscal year segment type code, single ticket buyer, whatever. and then the segment description. And here I'll show you what that will look like in the next screen. So this is how you map your files. It's pretty straightforward. Again, here's the file field. That's going to be the first row of your file, of your spreadsheet. Whatever you name them, they're going to be listed here. Here's sample data. That's the first row of actual patron data in your file, so you can spot check it. And then here's the TRG field, and this is what we call what we would map them to. So here, this one looks like customer number. Again, I've got that, so that's good. It's patron ID. Here's first name. Here's last name. If I have any question, I can come up here and preview the file. Here's full name. You can do either first and last or full. Here's address 1, address 2, city, state, and postal code. Um, Great. Oh, I did that wrong. Here's city, state. Thanks for catching that if you did. Okay, cool. These other fields don't matter. So you can see I've got my required fields taken care of here. These are required. I'm going to add email address because it's helpful. You'll never trade email addresses or phone numbers, but if you have them in your data, we recommend that you import them. This one says home phone, so I'm going to use that. And we're good. So I've got all of my required fields checked off and some of my recommended fields. I'm going to click next, and it's going to say, yep, you are importing this Mamma Mia 2024 single ticket buyer file. It's going to create 3,012 households, and it's going to create a new segment. I click finish. That's going to import overnight. It'll run through NCOA, pull in all the juicy demographic data from our data partner Axiom, and it'll be typically available next day. We do say it can take 1 to 5 business days for a file to import, just in case there are file errors or something like that, but that's pretty rare. So I would usually click finish in this case, because this is a demo, I'm going to cancel. And tomorrow, hopefully, that segment will appear here in Paper Mill's single ticket segments. It would say 2024 single ticket buyers, Mamma Mia. Here in the segments module, I can see a few other things. I can see the trade visibility. If you ever want to adjust that, just click on this little pencil and you can decide whether it's visible for trade or not. You can also rename that in here. And I can see the total household counts. And this is everything in data center is going to be around patron households, just so you can see that. Great. All right, now I want to look at creating a campaign together. So a campaign again can be used for doing a direct mailing like a brochure or a postcard, or it can just be used for some really fascinating research. So I went ahead and created a campaign in here. I'm calling it my 24-25 single ticket buyer campaign. That's going to be the umbrella of everything I'm doing in here. And then I'm going to come back and then I'm going to actually add a list, which I've done here. Um, let me start fresh here and just we'll add some new things together. But a campaign list is where you add the people that you want to reach out to, right? It's going to be your past buyers, your house data, and it's going to be also where you can add trade data from your trade partners in the community network. So um, there's some filters up here that I'll chat about in a second. There are suppressions and includes. There are some numbers up here that we'll touch on, the finish button, and then reports right here that are really helpful that we'll pull. So I've got my campaign and my list in here. I'm not going to worry about suppressions right now. Most organizations will add automatic suppressions. Um, And the suppressions are going to be your do not mails, your do not contact, etc. So they would be added in here. But I'm going to start by including some lists. So this is my 24-25 single ticket campaign. So I'm going to start by adding my past ticket buyers, right? Because those are the people, like I said, most likely to purchase tickets in the future. So this is for 24-25. So let's pull in our 23, 24 single ticket buyers. And I'm just going to go in and click a few of these. Great. And I'll add those segments to my campaign. So, um, oh, and I've got some filters on there. Okay, there we go. So as you can see, I've got my gross count here, my net count. Gross count is total households in each segment. And then net count is that deduplicated number after we're looking for unique mailable households and deduplication. And you can see the total count here at the top. So again, gross patrons, households, and net count of patron households. So I've got 18,547 in here. That's good. And again, that's all house data. Let's look at adding some trade segments. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go here to add segments, existing and trade segments. And instead of my organization, which is the default, I'm going to look for trades from, I don't know, um, let's do, let's get some trades from New Jersey Rep. That looks like a good idea. So I'm going to come in here and see, okay, here's a couple of single ticket segments. These look good. I will add those to my campaign. Okay. So I don't automatically get to just use New Jersey Rep or anyone else's segments. I would actually come up here and send a trade request, send this request and say, hey, this is for an upcoming postcard, whatever you could explain. Um, but I would send this request, and then the rep or whoever your potential trade partner is gets the opportunity to approve or deny that trade request. There's something like a 90% approval rating, but we do have that extra check in there for trades. So I'll cancel that for now, just because we're doing this as a demo. But you can see that those two trade segments are listed down here. They are also run through deduplication. So this is prioritized. So just for the fun of it, if I move this segment up, that number should go up a bit. We got about 10 patron households back when I prioritized it. So that tells me that if there's a segment up here that's prioritized, it will eliminate any duplicate households in the subsequent ranking here in each segment. Okay. So I've got 19,001 patron households here. Let's say I want to actually mail, if I'm doing a mail campaign here, to 10,000. So I could use my filters to help us whittle down that patron household count and get really targeted with who we're reaching out to. So I want to start by adding a geography filter. So a geography filter can be used to target via city, state, county, postal code, SCF, which is that first three digits of a postal code. But first, before adding the filter, I want to run a report. So I'm going to go to my reports and run a list postal code with map report. Okay, here we go. It's loading. And this is going to show us of those 19,001 patron households where these people live. It's an interactive map, so this should look familiar. In this case, it's New Jersey and the surrounds. So if I hover over here in Livingston, New Jersey, 07039, I can see that there are 331 households. And if you look at the legend, the darker the green, the higher the number of households in it. So 07052 in West Orange, I've got 407. So that could tell me where I've got my concentration of the most households in this campaign. If I go to the next screen, I can see household penetration rate, which is just a different view. And this tells me of the total population of each zip code, 07081, Springfield, New Jersey in this case, we have 231 households, which is 1.6% penetration rate of the total postal code. Meaning, if just for round numbers, if I had 100 households in a postal code and there were 10 of them, 10 of those households in my campaign, I'd have a 10% penetration rate. So the way to apply that to our work is if you have a really high penetration rate in any particular zip code, that's usually a good place to look for other prospects because people who live around each other tend to have similar buying behavior, and so that's a great place to look for new patrons with your trades. If I keep clicking, I can see the detail. The top, performing zip code is 07052 West Orange. There are 407 households in that postal code. This is easily exportable. I could just click this little disk here and export it to Excel. But let's apply that to our campaign. So I want to let's remember we want to get down to about 10,000 households. So let's just look at the households that are in the state of New Jersey, just for the fun of it. We think we don't want to bring in anyone, try to mail to anyone, I should say, from a different state, just for the fun of it. So when I click save, let's see how that changes our net count here. Okay, so it dropped us down to 13,084 households. That's pretty good. And that's way more targeted, right? I could do uh, a different filter here and do a postal code by radius. If I knew paper mills, zip code, I could say I only want to look at households within 20 miles of that and add those postal codes there. For now, I'll just leave this New Jersey filter as it is to show you how it works, but other great ways that you can get really targeted there. Cool. So we've got 13,084 households. I still want to get a little bit more targeted and mail to 10,000 of my best prospects to buy these single tickets. So I'm going to add a demographic filter here. So every time you import data, that data runs through our data partners Axioms data set, and they bring back as many demographic data points on your patron households as are available. And they come from places like the US Census report, the other state and county records, credit card records that show buying behavior and things like that. So I could add a filter based on one of these demographic data points, and Data Center would return the total number of households that are applicable. But first, I'm going to go back to my reports, and I actually want to run a list demographics report. Okay, so that's just going to be on this 13,084 patron households that are remaining. I could compare it to my entire organization's data, the entire AIM Audience Insights Manager, New Jersey data set, other data sets, other lists. In this case, I'm just going to look at the data itself. And again, we have all these interesting demographic data points just on that list of 13,084 households. So here's education level, marital status, presence of children in the home. Here's race and ethnicity. So this is an interesting place to look as we're all trying to diversify our audiences and bring in audiences that are, in a lot of cases, less white. This is a good place to look for benchmarking. I promised that we would talk about benchmarking EDI. So this is a good place to look generally. In this case, for this list, I can see that 82.7% of those total patron households, again, 13,084, are white or other. 4.4% African American. Here's Asian and Hispanic. Another data point that could help me with diversity and EDI benchmarking here is generation. So just of those 13,084 households, I can see that 40.5%, so 45% and some change are baby boomer or older. 31.7% are Gen X. 17% are Gen Y or millennial. We call it Gen Y in the system. It's millennial. And then close to 6% are Gen Z, born after 1997. Interesting to see. I have household income here. Household income is a great place to help marketing and fundraising teams collaborate and work together because we're not competing to we don't want to compete to message the same patron households, right? We want right person, right message, right time. And typically we wouldn't want a first-time single ticket buyer, if we think about our evolution of a patron slide, to get a fundraising ask email right away, right? We just want to bring them back to see their next show, their second show. So after we have segmented our first time ticket buyers out, household income is a great place to bring together a fundraising and marketing team and get really targeted about who we're reaching out to and saying, perhaps. Fundraising Devo team, you're taking the households that are $200,000 and above household income annually. And the marketing team is going to work with this different segment. Just an idea, just a suggestion, but that's a great way to use the tool. Other great demographic data points. We can tell you what kind of car your patrons drive. And you might say that's not very helpful for arts marketing, but hey, if you find that I don't know, in this case, 264 households drive a Hyundai. If you found that, like 40% of all of your patrons drive a Hyundai, well, that's a good opportunity to go to the local Hyundai dealership and say, hey, look at this data. You should become a corporate sponsor for 25 grand a year or whatever. I'm making this up, but just to show you how you can apply this data to your marketing and fundraising work. So I'm back to my campaign. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add a filter. For whatever reason, we're going to focus on generation, and I only want to look at the households that are Gen X, Gen Y, Millennial, and Gen Z. So I'll add that filter and click Save, and that changes our net count to 4,577. Wow, so we got really targeted really quick. Maybe that's too few. Maybe that's exactly the number that I want to send out because I'm doing an event where I want to target younger audiences, right? There is a small cost to mail using a demographic filter. In this case, it would be $45.77. As you can tell, it's $10 per thousand households. If you're just running this report to look for the net count, the numbers, that's free to you. You would not be charged for that. So if I said, great, this is my final list, I'm done. All you would need to do is click finish. We would have actually had to get those trade requests approved first, but I'll cancel that for now. And here is where you can decide what kind of export you want. I'm pretty much always going to select deduplicated, which is best for mailings. And here you can select your mail house because you'll always send your list for mailing directly to a third-party mail house. And here's where you can create a download for yourself. And this important warning here is reminding us that you'll never be able to download another organization's data. So those trade segments, you won't see those households. But here you can select to create a download for yourself, and you'll be able to see your own patron household. So let's say you bought that demographic filter, you would be able to get that list of all of those Gen X millennials and Gen Zers who live in the state of New Jersey. You would have the detailed list, and you can use that for an e-blast campaign, perhaps. That's why I mentioned it's important to always import your email data. You'll never trade it. You'll never another organization will never see your patrons' email addresses. So it's a good best practice to go ahead and do that. So that you have full data there. So I think it's going to make me pay for my filters in the next screen, so I won't go on. Yeah, but otherwise you would click finish after you pay and you'd be good to go. If you didn't have a demographic filter on here, there would be no payment screen. You would just click finish. The download takes about 5 minutes for yourself, and the same thing for your mail house. So Everyone can add as many mail houses as you like. Paper Mill has a couple of them in here, and they'll get their own free data center account that you can direct message, you can direct file transfer them your file for mailing. We never, 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 if you only take one thing from this webinar, we never want to email patron household data, meaning patron name, address, any biographical data. That's unfortunately a good way to get your data hacked. And no one wants to message your patrons and tell them they were part of a data hack. So never email patron data. That's why we have this file transfer option in here. And if not, use something like uh, Google or Box or something like that to direct message to direct file transfer, I should say, your patron data. Great. So that is how you create a mail campaign or a campaign for research. Okay. Next, I'm going to look at some reports here. There's tons of great reports here in the reports module. Some of them I already showed you, so I won't go over those again. Things like demographics and postal code reports, but you can run those on varying levels. So this section is the community section. So if you're part of a community network like ArtPride New Jersey's AIM, Audience Insights Manager, you would see that aggregated data here, just like the demographics report I pulled, but all of that data. Same thing with the postal code with map. Let me run this community organization crossover map because I really like to show this one off. This will take just a second to load, but this is going to show you of the entire community network. And if you have reciprocal trading like New Jersey does with New York and Philadelphia, how many patron households you have in common with the other organizations. So this is really fascinating because it'll tell you who your best trade partners will be. So this y-axis is Paper Mill Playhouse, and you can see the way to read this is basically green is the most, yellow in the middle, and red is the least. But you can see that Paper Mill has about 3,627 patron households in common with ArtPride New Jersey, 3,500 with George Street Playhouse, 6,000 with McCarter Theater Center. So again, if you have a high crossover with one organization, that's usually a good indicator that they have this whole other group of prospects to you who haven't come to your space before, who haven't come into your venue. So that's a great way to find your best trade partners is looking in this community organization crossover report. Other great reports down here, data quality, info management, list reports. So again, you can pull all of those reports, but just on the list level. Remember that campaign list that we just created? That's the level here. Here's NCOA. So you could pull reports on good moves, bad moves, and undeliverable addresses. Good moves would be the US Postal Service knows that you've moved because you probably fill out like a change of address form. And we can pull a report here of updated addresses for you to then update your CRM. Super helpful because we never want you to waste money on a mailing by trying to send it to someone who doesn't live there anymore. Um, so that's good moves. Bad moves is that the patron has moved, but we don't have an updated address. So same thing, you might want to update your database with, a field like get address. But most importantly, we don't want you to try to mail to them because it'll be undeliverable and you'll waste those valuable marketing dollars. And then NCOA undeliverable addresses is usually just like we're missing information like an apartment number or something like that. Here's the organizational level report. So same thing, organizational level demographics, a great place to look as you're trying to benchmark your data around EDI and other things like that. The postal code with map, organization segment crossover, and other great things there. And then here's the segmentation drop down where you can do a segment demographic comparison. For instance, let's compare one particular show to another particular show. You could do that with, again, comparing one segment to the entire Audience Insights Manager data set or one to my entire organization. So let's just do that. Let's compare Paper Mill's 2024 single ticket buyers to their entire organization. So we'll see how demographically those look different. This is a great thing to do every single year with the marketing team, whoever would be interested in demographics. And then exporting this report and being able to look again next year to see how we're changing, how we're improving, where we're going. So as this loads, should take just a minute because we're pulling in all of the data from the organization. So we'll see a left and right, those 2024 single ticket buyers on the left and the entire organization on the right. So you can see education. Here we go. High school graduates in gray. So we can see that there are a larger proportion of the single ticket buyers from 23-24 are high school graduate level. That's the final level of education they finished. 28% compared to 30 for completed undergrad, and then graduate school here in green. Here's marital status. Not much of a difference there. Presence of children. This is kind of interesting. So here's the key here. So 56% of single ticket buyers from 23-24 are have children present compared to 40, almost 44 that don't. And it's reversed there for the overall paper mill data set. So 46% have children present in this case, and 54% do not. So our 23-24 single ticket buyers generally were more likely to have children in the house compared to the entire database. Here's race and ethnicity again, which we looked at a bit earlier. Pretty close numbers there. And then again, here is generation, which I always like to spend a minute looking at because, we are trying to, of course, diversify our audiences among race and ethnicity, but we also have to work hard to pull in new, younger audiences. So I can see the trends here they make sense, right? Try to get everything on the screen there. So our 23-24 single ticket buyers here on the left compared to our entire history, our entire database, we can see that there are 5% more Gen Xers in this segment, this list on the left of 23-24 single ticket buyers. There are, doing quick math in my head, 8% more millennials. And look, there are 5% more Gen Z. So these demographics are moving in the direction that we need to see them move into, right? Are they moving fast enough is a question that I would ask next, right? And I would pull probably show by show, season by season, are we making up the numbers of younger audiences or new generations, I should say, compared to what we're losing from older generations is just a question and a way to use this demographic data for benchmarking with EDI, household income again. But anyway, all to show you, this is that same demographics report that I pulled in our campaign, but this is including a specific season, 23-24 single ticket buyers compared to my entire organization. And again, like I said, using household income data here is a great way to work with the Devo team to collaborate. And that's something that TRG always prioritizes, is finding ways to bring those two teams together because we're all working towards the same thing, right? At the end of the day, we're all trying to get our patrons to the top of this evolution of a patron ladder to create our advocates and investors, our board members. And we think that, using this tool for data is a great way to do that. Okay. That's all for me today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. You should have my email address. It's acotlar@trgarts.com. And I'm always happy to schedule some time with you and your colleagues at the organization to figure out how to apply this to your work or your specific needs. So reach out anytime, and thanks so much. Have a great day.